Hello and welcome to episode 49 of Crucible Bootcamp. Today we have a special episode. We're going to be talking about the patch notes, specifically going into some topics involving what it means to be viable versus competitive, some dangers of evaluating anything in a vacuum, and specifically the power struggle that comes along with the new changes to special ammo with the patch preview notes. Now, it's important to keep in mind two things. First thing is that this is all my personal opinion based on kind of my analysis of what's going on with the patch notes as well as what's already going on in the game. And the second thing is that the notes that I'll be showing aren't the official Bungie notes. They're just the little tidbits that we got out of the stream, the preview stream. So once the official patch notes are out, the conclusions that I'll make will be a little bit more well-grounded. But until then, take anything that I say with a grain of salt because it is subject to change. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so I have the patch notes up here right now. And we're going to be we're just working our way down. So it's going to start at the big change here at the top, shotguns. It's going to work all the way down to a little bit of exotics. And I'll work through what I noticed on stream, some observations that I made and things like that. So let's go ahead and start with the elephant in the room, shotgun. So we'll just read through it and then we'll kind of work back on what it actually means for the weapon type and how it's going to affect us in the Crucible. So the first big bullet point is they decrease the in-air accuracy of shotguns. So it's going to be a lot harder to land all the pellets that you need to ensure a one-shot. Now, how difficult this is, we don't know. Can't currently test it. But the fact that they're introducing more inconsistencies, similar to what primaries were like prior to this upcoming patch, you're going to have to follow up melee a lot more when you play in the air. Now, this change primarily affects how you'll play aggressively. It won't really affect any kind of defensive shotgunning, and we'll go more into what that actually means later on. After we go through all the notes, I'll give you guys some concrete examples of what I'm talking about in game. So the second one is decreased magnetism, bullet magnetism, and no aim assist when firing from the hip. So this is an interesting change and one I don't necessarily agree with. Bullet magnetism basically is how much your bullets lock onto a target if you're relatively close, right? If you shoot way off to the side, your bullets aren't going to suddenly like curve all the way in to hit your target. But if you're off by a few pixels, then it's going to hit the target and not be a straight out miss. And the reason for this is because on consoles, you don't have pixel perfect accuracy. It's nearly impossible for you to translate your thumb controller movement into pixel perfect accuracy. And that's something that you can do on a mouse and keyboard, which is why a lot of arguments come on, and it's a lot easier to play on controller because of the nature of the fact that there's a lot of inaccuracies and a lot of lack of precision movement when it comes to using a controller. So the game system is set up so that it makes it easier for you to hit those shots, and that's primarily what aim assist is. And aim assist comprises of not only aim assist but also things like bullet magnetism and hitboxes and how large those hitboxes actually are. For example, if you go into a game, you don't necessarily need to have your reticle completely on a target. It can be just slightly off. So the hitbox on your target is actually larger. We'll let's pull up our handy dandy whiteboard. So the hitbox on your target, if let's say we have a box here. This is our hitbox. Now our target itself within the box could potentially be a lot smaller. Now this is an exaggeration, so this isn't exactly how it works. But our target in the box is smaller than the actual hitbox. So if we fired here in this location, it's going to count as potentially a headshot. Again, this is not how it works precisely one-to-one in the game, but this is how the example pans out. Just kind of get an idea of what bullet magnetism does. Bullet magnetism says that this bullet, because it's on a console, this bullet, even though it missed, the hitbox is this large, so you actually hit your target. Now, in reality, if we draw our combatant, the hitbox is probably more akin to this. Here. This is probably more what the hitbox looks like, where you're going to score hits in these locations as opposed to, you know, those extremes. And then bullet magnetism is going to pull it in. So, when it comes to shotguns, decreased magnetism means you're going to have to be a lot more accurate when it comes to lining up your shot in that reticle. And the fact that there's no aim assist when it's firing from the hip. So aim assist slows down your reticle as you pass onto a target so that it helps you with overcorrecting. Because again, with a lot of the inconsistencies of movement with your thumb, aim assist slows down the reticle as you move it past your target. So that way it's more difficult for you to overcorrect. It's kind of like the reverse of mouse acceleration, where as you move the mouse cursor, it gets faster and faster and faster, even though you don't necessarily move your hand any faster. That's mouse acceleration. It's the reverse of that. So you're moving, and then eventually you hit your target, and even though you're moving at the same speed, it's going to slow down how much your reticle is actually moving. So aim assist is good because it helps you with the, and that's why you want it very high if you can, because it helps you with the fact that maybe you're overcorrecting as you're trying to lock onto a target. So the fact that they took off aim assist on the hip means that you have to be, there's two things. You have to be very accurate when you track your target. And it really discourages you to be in to be so close to your target that you're basically within the hitbox model. So no aim assist means that if you don't see the model in front of you, and the game doesn't recognize that there's a model in front of you because there's no aim assist, you're going to miss. Whereas before, so an example of this is if you're sliding into your target, and if you slide so close that you're on top of your target, if you turn a little bit and get your target out of your vision, you could potentially miss that person out. Whereas aim assist before would help you out with that. Again, I don't know to what extreme this actually is. I'm not saying like if your models are touching, it's just not going to work anymore. But if you definitely move past your target, or as you're moving past your target, you have to be much more accurate. So before, if the center of your reticle was on, say, half their body, maybe you would kill them in that extreme range. Whereas now you would probably only hit half your pellets as you pass by because of the decreased magnetism, the decreased aim assist. So in extreme close quarters, it's going to be more difficult for you to actually land a shot because it's predicated on your own thumb and gun skill. So if you're a shotgunner right now and you sort of just kind of play it by ear as you fire, and you kind of coast through aiming with your shotgun, you can't do that anymore. You absolutely have to have really good aim with your shotgun now in order to use it effectively while hip firing. If you ADS a lot, that doesn't change. You still want to be ADSing. The next change is remove precision damage from shotguns, and that excludes the chaperone and the universal remote, which both have special qualities for headshots. Removing precision damage is a very, very detrimental change to how shotguns work, because shotguns are one of only two special weapon types that can adequately challenge supers. So we can already see, so in a vacuum, that's not so bad, right? Precision damage, taking away precision damage from shotguns isn't such a big deal. But what happens is the way the game is balanced, a lot of people like to see the game as balanced as a seesaw, right? So we'll go back to so a lot of people like to see the game balanced as a seesaw. So if this is true balance, you know, we have our seesaw, and it's balanced on a fulcrum. Say it's here. And if you move too far in one direction, then what ends up happening to the seesaw is it tips, right? So if we move the fulcrum too far to the left, there's a lot of weight on the right side, so it's going to end up dipping like this. So if it dips, then this is an imbalance, right? So if we tip the scale in too far in one favor, then this is what an imbalance is. So a lot of people think of balance as one-dimensional, right? There's one seesaw, there's one fulcrum, and when you nerf one thing, another thing gets better. That's not how balance works when you have multiple moving pieces. So if shotguns get worse, snipers get better because it's harder to challenge them, right? So that's like that's one seesaw. But the problem is that the game is created on multiple seesaws. So you have multiple things you need to balance. So as an example, here, let's say we have special weapons. I'll type this out so you can actually read this. You have special weapons versus primary weapons. So right now, the scales are, before the patch comes out, the scales are clearly tipped in special favor, right? Primary, it's very difficult to adequately challenge specials with primary. So the fact that they did something that we'll cover later on with special ammo that tips primary in their favor causes a lot of other problems. So now that primaries are the best and specials are on the bottom, you have to also keep in mind, well, how does this same example affect supers? Right? Specials were really good at challenging supers. So now we have another balance issue stemming from the same fulcrum. Right? It's the same spot. So specials were good at countering supers, so now that specials are bad, right, specials are down here, and primaries are good. So that's good for a lot of players. But now that specials are bad, supers are really good. And primaries aren't good against supers. So just with these three examples, you already see the issue, right? So if instead, this is sort of a rock, paper, scissors issue, where you have a super, and you have a primary, and a special weapon. And let's say special weapons beat supers, supers beat primaries, and primaries can beat specials now. What happens if you take out one of these legs? How do you deal with a super? And this is going to be one of the huge issues that we're going to run into as players in the Crucible now. Because you're going to be taxed on this, and you're not going to have it. So what this means is that the game is going to start revolving around power struggles. And the power struggles are going to be this. If you have a super, and you have no way to counter it, the only way that you're going to be able to counter that super is with your own super. So this is how the metagame is going to work. So this is it. The game is going to start revolving around this concept that supers beat supers. And that's it. So what does that mean for you as a player? Well, what are the mechanics that go into a super? Well, your intellect goes into that. And your subclass. And the type of super. So now we have 3 different things we need to worry about. So this means we need to prioritize intellect, we need to pick the right subclass, and we need to worry about that subclass when it comes to the type of super it has. And if you save your super, then that can be an issue, right? Because if you save your super, the game slows down because you can't necessarily push into that person if they're going to counter super you. And as soon as you get rid of their super, or as soon as you get rid of your super, they're going to start roaming freely with theirs. So it's just going to be this big stalemate. Now this is all, again, this isn't a vacuum, right? So we're not taking into account other things. And that primarily I want to point out that there are other players in the game, right? It isn't just you. You have two teammates. Let's say trials. So this issue that supers are incredibly overpowered now, or have very little counterplay to them, can be stopped by, even though your primary doesn't work against this, right? The super is better than the primary. If you multiply that by 3, then it equals out. So even more than has ever been apparent in the Crucible, you have to be very good at teamfire. You have to play very well as a team in order to challenge these supers when yours are down or when you don't have secondary ammo. This isn't to say that that same system where we have this checks and balances system doesn't work anymore, right? This still works. But one is incredibly limited. So if we're prioritizing supers, we also have to prioritize which secondary we use. And this is going to be a huge issue moving forward. So let's go ahead and get back to so we'll keep this in mind, right? How do we adequately get this in order to challenge this? Because this isn't good enough. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay, going back to shotguns, they increase the ADS time. So the big point about this precision damage from shotguns is that it becomes that much harder to challenge a super, and this makes close and or personal on your Party Crasher or on your Matador the second most important perk that you want on it. I'm just going to say aggressive and rifle barrel as the same perk. So you always want aggressive and rifle barrel on your shotgun, unless it can't reach max range. And then you want accurized and rifled. And then after that, you don't want rangefinder anymore. You want, because it's in the same slot generally, you want close and or personal. And that's so that because of this precision damage reduction, you can still challenge those same supers you were challenging before. So you can still challenge a Blade, you can still challenge a Storm, you can still challenge, what's the other one I'm thinking of? Radiant Skin, and you have a chance against it because of close and or personal. If you don't have that, then a shotgun is going to be about as effective as a fusion rifle or a sidearm is at challenging those supers, and it's not going to be capable of doing that on its own. Now, if you go back to that example where we're team firing together, absolutely it'll still work. If you hit someone with a shotgun and your buddy or your two buddies hit them with their primary, or maybe they hit them with a shotgun, that person's going to die. But you can't necessarily do it as easily on your own anymore. So again, you need to be more of a team player moving forward in the final life cycle of the game. This increased ADS time for rangefinder perks means that it's going to take longer to fully ADS in. And based on the research that people have done on rangefinder is the longer you ADS until the point where it's at max, like it doesn't zoom in anymore, is how much of a benefit you get out of it. So if you just tap ADS, you get a little benefit. And if you hold it down till it stops moving, you get the most benefit. Well, now that you have even more time before you get to that most benefit, it makes it very risky to do things like slide shotgun. Or even you run the risk of, if you don't have like Ophidian aspects that helps your handling with the ADS time, you're going to run into issues where you're going to end up not getting all your shots on your target because you're going to be suffering from this magnetism and hipfire aim assist nerf. There's a PvE buff to shotgun damage to make up for no precision damage. That's cool that they did that. That helps you actually, run strikes and whatnot. And then they removed the agility decrease. So there was a move speed debuff that wasn't explicit, but on a prior nerf to shotguns, when you would have a shotgun out, you would move slower. So they took that away, which is really good, is good in comparison to all these other things, but it doesn't really help the situation that shotguns are going to be less reliable when they were most powerful, which is in the air, and less reliable in one of their most important positions, and that's hip firing when you're basically touching the other model. So those two things will make shotguns more difficult to use. I'm not going to say that they're going to be more fair. I think they were plenty fair before, but I think increasing the skill gap on good shotgunners with making them have good aim, I think making a shotgunner have good aim is a good thing. I think this is a little overboard, the fact that it doesn't give any aim assist when hip firing, and also discouraging you to use the movement in the game by decreasing inner accuracy. There are a lot of like issues. Now, on the opposite end of this, there is a good thing, in my opinion, that comes out of decreasing inner accuracy. So I've touched on this a little bit, but I don't think anyone that knows me in game as opposed to personally really understands how much or how important I think it is for there to be a concept of counterplay in everything that you do. I think that when there's nothing that you can do to stop someone from doing whatever there is to do, that's unhealthy for a game. In any game, really. An example outside of Destiny is in, I used to play a lot of Magic. So if there was a combination of cards that you would play in Magic that your opponent really couldn't answer, and their only answer was to do it themselves, that's unhealthy because you limit options and the game stagnates, right? It's just, you either do option A, that's the de facto best option, or you do option B, that's the de facto best option to counter option A, and then that's it. There's two things. You're with them or you're completely against them. And when you're completely against them, if that one thing is so good that it doesn't matter, that's a huge issue. And that's the idea that a lot of players had with shotguns, that they were so good there was nothing you could do against them. And if you've watched this show for long enough, it doesn't, you know that there's always something you can do against shotguns. Like, they're not completely overpowered. Since House of Wolves, I would say there was nothing there was not one singular thing that was so completely overpowered that you couldn't beat it. Now, if you go back to House of Wolves and you go back to Year 1, there's some glaring issues with weapon balance when it comes to like fusion rifles and 2-tap hand cannons, or even 1-tap hand cannons, the range on them, all that stuff, like things being the de facto best, and then if you didn't use it, you were just subpar. That was an issue, so I'm glad that they changed that. But by decreasing inner accuracy with shotguns, what Bungie's actually doing is giving you an opportunity to counterplay that shotgun. Because if a shotgunner is pushing you aggressively off the ground, and it's more likely than not, or more likely than before, they're not going to hit all their pellets on you, which means they're not going to one-shot you in that range, because there's going to be that level of inaccuracy. And what that means is that they have to follow up melee. So if you give yourself enough space, instead of getting 3 shots on them with your last word and then dying to a shotgun, you have time now to get that 4th shot and potentially trade, or just outright win the engagement if they say forget to melee you, right? If they hit you with an in-air shot and they can't follow it up, or they forget to follow it up with a melee, Nino Burrito. All right. So let's go ahead and move into primaries. So primaries are kind of getting buffed across the board, which is really good. Again, if we go back to that example where the whole super primary secondary trifecta. Buffing primaries should help you, well, basically do everything in the game, and you should be primarily using that weapon now because of the changes that they're making to things like special ammo economy. So we'll start with pulse rifles and then move down the list. So they reduced the rate of fire for low impact pulse rifles, Clever Dragon, Grasp Malice, by 7.7% or 1 frame. So we're going to do some basic math to show you what that actually means, 1 frame. The game runs at 30 frames per second. So that's how long it takes in real time, 0.03 seconds, for 1 frame to happen. Now, because the rate of fire is reduced by this, and it takes at least 3 bursts to kill your target, we multiply that by 3. And we see that time to kill, optimal time to kill on the Clever Dragon, I'm going to have to edit this so hard. Okay, well. This is the Earth. That has a good looking Earth. Alright. I have not rebooted the PC. I have fandangled some things that needed some fandangling. So hopefully this works, and I will try to keep an eye on my monitors to see if it's actually keeping going. Alright, so this means that Grasp of Malik time to kill goes up to almost 1 second. And I need to double check this real quick. Maybe it's 0.8 seconds. Oh, okay, 0.8 seconds. So this is the new time to kill on Grasp, on Clever Dragon, on the lowest impact pulse rifles. So it's important to note that basically accounting for latency and netcode and all that stuff, these are equivalent. So what this means is that your Clever Dragon is going to have the same optimal time to kill as an Ias Luna. So now, and also, this is the same time to kill as Hawksaw. And Hawksaw, if we go back to the spreadsheet, we see that Hawksaw kills in 8 crits, and Grasp of Mallet kills in 8 crits and 1 body. So this means that Hawksaw is actually going to be more forgiving because you can miss an entire bullet and still on both 12 body or 8 crits. So you're going to want to use Hawksaw or your Suros PDX or Aegis of the Reef, Blind Perdition, Party Favor. You want to use one of those now instead of your Clever Dragon because of that one frame difference. That's what 1 frame difference looks like on this particular weapon. So yeah, 0.1 seconds. That's what 1 frame does on this archetype. Rate of fire increase for high impact pulses by 5.3 seconds or 5.3%. They didn't say how many frames that was. My guess is it's probably 1 frame. Same as here. Maybe half a frame. But if we go back here, that means it's probably like the 2 bursts, maybe it goes down to 0.65 instead of 0.73. Maybe body shot time goes down to 1.25 or 1.2 or 1.1. So that's okay. That's okay that goes down to that time to kill. You still have to get perfect crits on the head in order to get optimal time to kill. You have 2 full bursts to the head. And you still have to get 3 full bursts to the body with the same time to kill or a little bit better after they increase the rate of fire as Hacksaw. So this archetype is going to be very, very competitive to this because you basically have to have the same level of accuracy to use both of these. You have to have thanks for the raid, babe. You have to have the same accuracy with a spare change that you do a Hacksaw, except Hacksaw you have to fire a 3rd whole burst. If you can get 2 headshot bursts on Hacksaw archetype, then you might want to consider switching to the Parthian shot. I wouldn't use spare change. The recoil direction is pretty bad. And Lyudmila, the spread on 4 whole shots is pretty huge. So you want to use the Parthian shot, and that's going to be from the Vanguard Quartermaster. So that gives you 2 options for pulses now instead of just the de facto 1 with Clever Dragon. So pulse rifles across the board have had their flinch reduced. That's a good thing. And this directly buffs sniper rifles. Pulse rifles are pretty popular right now. And also high caliber rounds is not as effective on pulse rifles. So those two things combined mean that when you go to challenge a sniper as a pulse rifle, there's going to be a lot more risk involved. If you're a sniper, you can challenge pulse rifles a little bit better. But the most important change for every single primary, barring hand cams, which already have this on them, is this change here, in-air accuracy. And this is a change that no one is talking about, and I do not know why. Because this changes how you play the game. All these buffs and these debuffs on these these weapons, where they nerf them, they buff them, that doesn't matter. Because that doesn't change how you play the game, right? Shotguns, you're still going to run at someone, you're going to put it in their face, you're going to pull the trigger. Pulse rifles, if your pulse rifle shoots a little bit slower, you're still shooting it from the ground, right? You're still getting an angle, you're still using a head glitch. But this here, increasing in-air accuracy on your, not just pulse rifles, but it's on auto rifles, and it's on scout rifles, means that you can start using your primary just like you would a hand cannon, so you can get off the ground. So you can push someone and actually bait them with your primary above a door. Any primary now. And this is absolutely huge for auto rifles, because when you jump in the air, you tend to be close to your opponent. So auto rifles benefit the most from this change, but pulses, it lets you do peek shotting. So you can hide behind a box and jump above it and take a shot, and you'll land a lot more shots now instead of, hey, maybe I'll hit 1, and then they'll know exactly where I am and I gotta run away. Like, body shotting someone for 17 and then having to turn around and run away isn't an effective thing to do in the game. But if you body shot them now for 50 instead of that 17 because you get a full burst on them, that's an actual, like, threat to your opponent. That's a quarter of their health just gone, just like that. And then you're instantly behind cover, and then you can move out of cover and just finish the engagement because you have a full shot on them. Letting you float above doors and accurately hit your target as you come down mean it's a lot safer to start following up meleeing. And with these decreases to shotguns, this becomes a little less risky, right? Jumping over doorways while someone's pushing in at you becomes slightly less risky because of all these nerfs to shotguns. It's a little bit harder to kill you now, so you have a little bit more time. So this kind of play is going to result more in trading than it would you just straight up losing. Again, a lot of counterplay involved there. That's very good. You want that. You want that counterplay. Personally, I personally thought Clever Dragon was in a fine place. Like, I like that they tuned it back to be the equivalent of your other good options. Now it isn't just de facto best if you can hit your shots because of how forgiving it is with the 4 burst. But I think they were fine before. I think people just want something to complain about. And I think the most important thing to take away that I took away from this patch is the people that complained about whatever it was the loudest are getting their changes, whether you like it or not. And even in the TWAB today, they talked about nerfing scories. So even though it's not nerfed today, it'll probably be nerfed in the future. So people cried about buffing primaries. This here is the largest buff to primaries in the game probably ever. Because when I've talked to John and Greg and Sage about what they were doing in the Crucible when they were developing it, and initially they didn't like putting inner accuracy on other weapons because they didn't like how it played. So the fact that they're changing this now means that they see something in this that brings a lot back to the game, that makes it play how maybe it should, now that all these other changes have come to play. Because remember, when the game first came out, it was completely different from what it is now. So yeah, this change, if it was in year 1 instead of now, might have been bad for the game, but now after all these changes, it's a completely different game. So this change is probably a huge positive. So this is the one I want everyone to focus on. Like this I applaud Bungie for, because this is a very smart change that should increase the amount of fun you have in the game. It's fun to use your movement, it's fun to get off the ground, it's fun to drop down on people when they're not expecting it, and it's effective. And now that it's more effective, you should see a lot more tricky plays with people baiting you over doors, or again, peek shotting you from behind, jump shotting you from behind boxes, or flying past the door and hitting you with a couple of shots and then turning around and challenging you from the ground. There's a lot of things that you can do. Okay, so auto rifles. Increase the base damage of low rate of fire, the low rate of fire archetype. So what they showed us on stream was this gun here, the Genesis chain. So it does 27 to the head and 22 to the body currently. Now what they showed on stream is it was doing 35 to the head and 27 to the body. The important thing to note, and the thing that was really misleading about the stream that I think some people picked up on and other people didn't, is that Genesis chain has what's called focus fire on it as a perk. Focus fire. What focus fire does is it reduces your rate of fire and it increases your damage by 25%. This is what focus fire does. So if we look back on the spreadsheet and we see Suros Regime has a little asterisk next to it. Well, Suros Regime, the time to kill with focus fire is 1 second on optimal. So you hit 6 crits, right? Does 35 to the head. You hit 6 crits, or 5 crits and a body shot, and you kill them in 1 second. That's going to be the same for Genesis Chain. So with focus fire active, it kills you in 1 second, not this 0.93. So this buff that they talk about here that says increased base damage doesn't mean they're increasing base damage by 8. If you do the math, they're actually increasing base damage by 1. 1. Now that might have a fraction to it because these numbers are fractions. It's not just flat 27. It could be 27.01, or it could be 27.1, or it could be 27.4. The game rounds. So we don't know if this crit damage is going to go up to 29 or if it's going to just go to 28. But based on my conservative on the low end calculations, it only goes up by 1. So that means that this time to kill doesn't change. What does happen is you need 1 less headshot to kill an optimal time. So instead of having to get 6 crits like you do now, you have to get 5 crits and a body shot. That's the only difference with this archetype. And you can see spinning up on Suros Regime when it's active, optimal time to kill is 0.7 seconds. So Suros already, if you have spinning up active, kills faster than any other primary in the game. That doesn't mean it's a good gun, but it is what it is. On paper, It's fantastic. In practice, not so much. So this buff on low rate of fire the low rate of fire archetype, it doesn't really matter. It matters. The only time it matters is if it bumps it up by 2 damage. If that's true, then this time to kill here goes down to 0.8 seconds. And if it goes down to 0.8 seconds, that puts it in line with your pulse rifles and your hand cannons. So that makes it a competitive option. So I talked about it at the beginning of this. There are viable options and there are competitive options. Now, everything in this game is viable because if you look at these optimal time to kills, what's the difference between the best auto rifle archetype and the worst auto rifle archetype? It's 0.06 seconds. 0.06 seconds is enough time that would equate to the tick rate on the servers. It's enough time to equate to the latency you have between you and the host, or between the host and you. It's enough time that you can miss a shot and then your opponent will kill you. This isn't such a huge gap that it's insurmountable, right? It's viable because it's close enough to whatever's at the top. So when people say, is my gun going to be viable? Your gun is already viable. You can already use it effectively and to a level where you can compete on close to an even playing field with your opponents. So you really can use whatever you want in this game. I mean, if you look at the other archetypes, 0.7 seconds, like on paper, this is fantastic. 1 second here on the mid tier is competitive with scout rifles, which are at 1 second here. And hand cannons, 1 second here. Even the worst archetype on hand cannons competes with the best scout rifle, competes with a mediocre pulse rifle. So yes, your gun will always be viable. Now, competitive is different. The level of competition when it comes to a weapon is all about what's the best. So if you're asking me if your gun is viable and you mean competitive, then that's the difference is your gun going to be one of the best? Is your gun going to beat out these meta guns or the guns on paper that look the best? The answer is no, right? If I'm using a villainy and I'm going against someone that's using an IS Luna, more often than not, I'm going to lose to that IS Luna because it just has a better time to kill and it's more forgiving as far as what you need to hit. Now, in reality, because this is all on paper, in reality, it just comes down to your own personal gun skill. If you're at a level that in the game where people miss shots, then this villainy is probably competitive compared to someone that's using, in your skill bracket, that's using an IS Luna. If you're missing, 2 or 3 shots, both of you, then yeah, this is going to be competitive at your level. But if you play at a level where people don't miss shots, then no, this is viable but not competitive. Competitive would be the IS Luna instead. Okay, second change to auto rifles, they increase the crit multiplier. So this is what makes this optimal time to kill a little bit more forgiving. It doesn't necessarily, it does shave off 1 bullet from Doctrine. So you need 12 crits in one body instead of, I think you need 13 crits to kill. So it pushes this time to kill down to 0.82. So DOP goes from 0.87 down to 0.82. But you have to hit 13 headshots. That is pretty hard. Even the people that I've seen that are absolute monsters with this gun do not hit this consistently. It just doesn't happen. Body shot time to kill on all these weapons doesn't change. None of it changes. Okay. Again, inner accuracy increase. This is the best on auto rifles because the nature of the auto rifle is to be relatively close to melee range. So the fact that you can shoot your auto rifle in air now, really cool because you can get those follow-up melees now. A lot more reliable. So this is a pretty cool change for auto rifles specifically. Everything else is kind of you know, it's cool. We can play off the ground now. But auto rifles, it'll change the way you actually use that gun. And with the changes that it's making to Doctrine, it could be the difference between, you know, hitting enough headshots or enough shots in general to follow up melee, and whereas before it was too wildly inaccurate, where you couldn't use it like that. You couldn't push with it in the air. So that's a good change. All right, hand cannons. This is a big one. Outside of in-air accuracy, this buff here, significantly increased initial shot accuracy, is really important. So if you recall from that video I made way back when, basically your gun, pew pew, has a cone called the initial accuracy cone. It goes like this. This is an exaggeration. It's really a lot closer. But what they did is they returned it to year one values. So instead of it being a wide, let's try to get this a little bit better. So it looks more like this right now, right? Say we're aiming this direction. It's still a cone, right? Well, now that they returned it to year one values, it looks something more like this. Try to get it as close as possible. All right, hold on. I'm just going to freehand that one. So it's more like a straight line a lot further out. And there's still going to be a cone attached to it, which means that if you're outside of your effective range, or well outside of your where you can even do max damage, let's say damage drop off on, or final damage drop off on hand cannons is about 50 meters. So this cone will exist in this range. It'll probably exist all the way back to, like, I don't know, high 30s, like 37-ish. But basically your first shot will go precisely where you're aiming it. When I made that video, my suggestion was that they change the cone to 23 meters, which was the sweet spot. So the fact that they changed it to, and they reduced base range, so if we look at an IS Luna has a maximum range in-game of about 31.8 meters right now. And this is rifle barrel. So with the change, that goes down to 26.8 meters. So before, your initial accuracy cone was good out to about 23 meters. With the change, it's going to be good to that 26.8. So that's a buff of almost 4 meters on your first shot, being completely accurate. So that's a really important change. At least 4 meters, right? With year one values, it's probably way further out than that. Based on the stream, it looked like it probably went out to like 12. But there was huge numbers of damage drop off. So you'll hit your target at this extreme range, but it won't do any damage. It won't do any, right? Because of this change here, they reduced the max damage reduction from 50% to 33%. So within this 50 meter range, your normally 86 damage headshot would go all the way down to 43. Now, it goes down to a third of that. So your normally 86 damage headshot goes all the way down to about 29. That is the change. But this 29 will hit, right? You hit that headshot at that range, you're going to hit this shot. Now, you're probably not going to hit the follow-up shots because bloom comes into play and you get a lot of aim assist reduction at that outside of effective range, but you're going to hit this 29. This is really important for reasons, again, I don't hear people talking about, because what happens when you body shot someone with a high impact sniper, right? You hit him with your event horizon. It does 181. And you know you're well out of range to hit them. With this change, where you have year one initial shot accuracy, you're going to be able to body shot that person from a ridiculously far away. And if all you need to hit is, you know, a 19 damage body shot, because hey, 33% of 57 is 19. If you hit them for 19, you add that to 181, that equals everything outside of max armor. So you will body shot people for 19 from Egypt, you know, way out in the desert, where no one can find you, and you will kill them. Unless they're a max armor titan or a ram warlock. That's huge. It's great that we're hitting our first shot, but more importantly, it's great that we can go back to blinting people with and feel confident about it, right? Because before there was always like, okay, I hit them with my body shot. Am I really? Is my IS Luna really gonna hit them on that first shot, or am I gonna get that initial accuracy cone and it's gonna RNG out, and I'm not gonna hit them? And then it's going to be even harder to follow up that shot because now I have Bloom in play. Now, you can have confidence. Like, I body shot them, I can hit that I body shot them with my sniper rifle, I can finish them off with my IS Luna now. That's a good change. That, again, indirectly brings the power level of sniper rifles up because you're increasing consistency. This reduced base range by 5 meters. I believe, from what it sounded like, this is across the board. All across the board. So I'm going to bring up... this is a post that Genellectual did a while back, 6 months ago. And this is damage drop-off start. So this is the effective range where you do max damage. So all these numbers go down by 5 meters. So the important ones I want to point out are... really the last word. Last word with soft ballistics has range out to 21.7 meters. This is affected by this 5 meter change. Now until we get actually in game, we'll have definitively, is it truly, or if they have a patch note that says, no, exotic hand cannons aren't affected by this, but I doubt it. It sounded like all hand cannons are affected by this, including exotic. So last word's effective range moves all the way down to 16 meters. That's pretty bad as far as having confidence in your shot without damage drop off. To put it in perspective, on your radar, the big pie slice is 8 to 23 meters. So that means when they're in the middle of that range, that's where you can use your last word. So that's important because before, if they showed up in that pie slice, you could pretty confidently challenge someone with soft ballistics last word, or even with aggressive ballistics last word. Now you have to move in a little bit closer to really be able to challenge them accurately. It makes last word really wonky, and but because they're nerfing shotguns, it's still going to be a solid gun. I just don't think it'll be as good as it is today. I think you're better off using an IS Luna or Palindrome or another legendary hand cannon of that archetype. Scout rifles, same thing with pulse rifles. That's inner accuracy increase. The big difference between scouts and pulses is there was a patch way back when where they said that scout rifle hip fire was reduced, right? They made it worse. That's a huge difference when it comes to pulse versus scout, because if you're jumping in the air, again, you're probably not ADSing in when you're jumping in the air. You're probably hip firing, or you probably don't have enough time to really line up a precision shot, so you're kind of aiming close to someone. So this is good for scout rifles, but it's not as important as pulses. It's kind of because it's still going to be really difficult to hip fire it. Again, it gives you another option, which is good, but not as impactful as for auto rifles and pulse rifles. Alright, so the biggest change in this patch is special ammo. So players start matches with special ammo, but you lose it after you die. Special crates spawn every 60 seconds to make up for the fact that you lose it after you die. And then here, reduce radius for special ammo drops for teammates when you pick up ammo, and players only start with special in the first round of elimination. So we're going to cover what this first half means, and then let's cover what it means in elimination first. So the way it works in elimination is round 1, everybody spawns in with whatever. Let's say you have a shotgun. You spawn in with your 6 rounds in your shotgun. And you play the first round. Let's say you win it, right? Let's say you shotgun 3 guys. That second round you spawn in, you have 0 ammo. Let's say you finish that first round and you pick up a box. That second round you spawn in, you have 0 ammo. None. So it doesn't matter if you pick up a box that first round. You're not going to spawn with it next round. So that means the first round in elimination is going to set you up for how that match is going to go. So there's 2 ways that elimination is going to go. Well, that I predict how it's going to go in trials. The first way is you win round 1, and then you charge your scory. Because you have a super advantage over your opponents right now. Even if they kill you, your super is still going to finish before theirs. So you're going to charge your scory faster, and so you're going to get your supers first. So going back to that wheel, if you have the super first, their primaries aren't going to be as good, and if they're not spawning with special ammo, and you push them before that 60-second mark, and they can't get the special ammo, then you're going to win a lot. Okay, so this is the first way that elimination is going to go. The second way, hello, keyboard, thank you, is you're going to win or lose round 1, but then you're going to aggressively push. And the reason you want to aggressively push is because you don't want them to charge their scory, and you also you no longer have to worry about special ammo. Now there's an exception to this, and we'll go over that in a second, but you don't have to worry about special ammo when you push them. You just have to worry about getting team shot, which is a lot easier to deal with than when you have to deal with someone with a shotgun or someone with a sniper rifle. So the exceptions to this aggressively push are 3 weapons. No Land Beyond, Universal Remote, and Sidearms. So No Land Beyond is going to stop that push pretty easily because it does a lot of damage with the body shot, and it's going to be easier to teamfire you. Universal Remote, they've said that they're nerfing it. We don't know how yet. So this might not be as much of an issue as No Land Beyond. And then Sidearms kill faster than every single primary in the game if you're in effective range. So if you're getting in primary versus primary battles and you're aggressively pushing into the enemy players, if you push too far, you will get melted by Sidearms. Sidearms spawn in with ammo, then they circumvent the change, just like they did before when you used to not spawn in with special. That's gonna be retained. And if you don't believe me when I say that you spawn in round 2 in elimination without any ammo, Derek, already the main Crucible sandbox, one of the main Crucible sandbox devs, already confirmed that's how it works. So deal with it, I guess. So for me specifically, Trespasser becomes a very attractive option because it kills faster than, it has better optimal time to kill than any other sidearm. And if you get 1 kill with it, you can potentially one-tap other people, which is the fastest non-one-shot gun in the game. So you hit 6 shots, 3 of them are heads, 3 of them are bodies, you kill practically everyone. You hit 4 headshots, 2 bodies, you do kill everyone. So if you're not using No Land Beyond, Trespasser is a really good option. If you are using No Land Beyond, Sidearms are great. That's how elimination is going to go. It's going to be either super campy or super aggressive. That's it. There's going to be no real middle ground anymore because of how special works. Because now that you lose it after you die, and this is where this concept of a power struggle happens. So even though they spawn every 60 seconds, right? They're spawning more often. If you die and everybody picks up a box, you don't get that ammo still, right? When you spawn back in and all the boxes are gone. If you pick up a box and immediately die, well, you don't have special when you spawn back in. Unless you're using a sidearm. So what this creates is a power struggle between what's going on in the game. And I like this idea on paper, and we'll see how it plays out. So what it's going to happen is so let's take threes. Let's take elimination out of it, and let's look at threes. Sixes is so chaotic right now, and it's so easy to get into primary battles that it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter that you lose special when you die. You're almost always going to be guaranteed to get at least one box because your team is always going to control half the map. So as long as you make sure that you're not dead when they're coming up, that's fine. And because it's only 60 seconds, that's about 4 to 5 engagements that you'll get into, and then you get another opportunity to get special. In sixes, you probably get an average of 10 to 15 kills. So assuming that you get a 1.0, that's 15 and 15, 30 engagements, you see 6 ammo boxes during that time. That's a lot of opportunities to re-pick up special and go use your special weapon to get whatever kind of kill you want to. But in threes, it could potentially create a situation where you snowball because both teams are going to come out, right, of their spawn, and they're going to start setting up angles. If you have a sniper, you're going to want to try to get a pick, because if you pick someone using a shotgun, when they get back up, they're not going to have the shotgun. So you can lock down choke points at that point as a sniper. Choke points you would normally never go into because you know that they don't have shotgun ammo. So if you body them, you have enough time to switch to your primary to finish them off. That's a huge change, and that creates a huge power struggle where if you're a shotgunner now, you have to be so mindful of how you move around the map and so careful that you don't get picked by those snipers. Because if you get picked by those snipers, the rest of that threes match could potentially snowball for the next 5 engagements. And if they win every one of those 5 engagements and then special comes back up, they probably have their super up. So then they're going to start supering you, and then they're going to take away that box you just got, right? That 60 seconds goes by, you pick up your box, you're ready to go, and then you get smashed, or you get nova'd, or you get stormcollared. Like, what do you do in that situation? Because the problem goes on. Now they have more special, and now they're beating you in secondary engagements again, and then they're going to charge another special in time for the next box, and the next box, and the next box. If they use 1 super per box, right, they stagger their supers. If they use 1 super per box, it's going to be really hard for you to come back. But the power struggle is that you have options now to deal with that, because your primary can play in air, so you can challenge these snipers in lanes with your primary. You can jump into it and actually get shots onto people instead of having to slide, so you're a little less predictable. Even though high cal and flinch is reduced on pulse rifles, you can still use a scout, right? They fixed high cal to actually work on scouts and actually work on hand cannons. So if you want to use Boolean Gemini as sort of a pulse, a new pulse option, a new clever dragon, you can try to use Boolean Gemini because it has built-in high cal, or you can use a distance star with high cal on it, and you can challenge those same snipers in their lane, do max damage, and have that high cal flinch. So that's good. And it also puts a target on your back when you have that special, right? So you have the tension of, oh god, I haven't died yet. I still have my sniper. I gotta play safe. I gotta play back. I gotta pick the right angles. I gotta watch my positioning. Are they pushing me? Am I gonna get team shot? Are they gonna surround me? Can I get out of this? As a shotgunner, it's gonna be, how much risk am I willing to take to get that kill? You can't just hold down sprint and run at someone, get back up and do it again, because you're gonna get back up and you're not gonna have any special anymore. So you have one shot at that, and if you screw it up, that's it. You have no other shots. Now there are ways to go around this, namely replenish and rescue mag. But if you have no ammo and you're trying to charge rescue mag, that means two things. One, you're running right at your enemy and you're taking damage and you have your shotgun out. And the problem with that is you don't have ammo in it. And two, once you get that ammo, you're probably dead because you're absolute. So people saying that rescue mag is going to be overpowered, remember that you have to survive in red health to get that proc. And in Rumble, the old play style where you play between special boxes doesn't really matter anymore. Because how Rumble works normally for your average player is, I'm spawning, I'm running to the zone I want to control, I see someone, I kill them, I'm going to move up. Oh no, I got crossfired because someone's doing the same thing. Okay, I get up, I have my shotgun, I'm going to run back, I'm going to get a shotgun kill. Oh no, I got killed shot in the back. Alright, I have 5 more shotgun shots, I'm going to run up, I'm going to go get a shotgun kill, I'm going to die again. That doesn't happen anymore. Because you're going to do the first part, you're going to get crossfired, and then you're going to spawn with no shotgun. And the guy that just killed you has a shotgun, and if he can hide better than you can hide after he finishes engagements, then he's going to have another shotgun shot for the next engagement. He's going to have a third one for the engagement after that. He's going to have a fourth one after that. If he picks up special and just picks his engagements right, where he's surviving after each one instead of getting crossfired, that's going to be the difference between who wins Rumble and who doesn't. And the way you deal with that is you run a sidearm. Sidearms are huge with this change. They're the only special weapon that you can spawn in when you spawn and have ammo. Now, Invective and Icebreaker have time limits. You'll spawn in, you'll have some time, then you'll get a piece of ammo. So if you want to cripple yourself by using a subpar weapon, but have ammo for it all the time because you can't not shotgun or you can't not sniper, those are your options. But in Rumble, I think you want to use sidearms because in a meta where the primary is king and the primary is being used, let's say 70% of the time, the secondary weapon that you always have ready that consistently beats out every primary in the game in your effective range, that's the way you want to go to win. Because you could go back to that warrior. You have to basically be a warrior to use a sidearm. The effective range on max range sidearms is 12, 13 meters, around there. Trespasser is 9 to 11, depending on which perk you pick. So with max range, let's say Conviction with Rangefinder, about 13 meters. Important to keep in mind that sidearm is still shorter range than Last Word, right? 13 meters, still less than 16. So Last Word, still potential to outgun sidearms. If you can hit optimal time to kill, if you can hit all your body shots. If you miss a shot, then it's about equal. So if you like Last Word, use a sidearm. It's a better Last Word now. Either Trespasser or Wormwood. I only recommend you use the Wormwood archetype because it's the most forgiving and it has the best time to kill. So you need 1 headshot and 3 body shots in effective range, or you just need like 5 body shots, or 5 to 6 body shots, which is pretty easy to get. They're very stable weapons. A lot of people, when you start using them, you'll overcorrect a lot. Just trust the recoil. It's not as much as you think it is. Okay. And then some little subclass changes. Hungering Blade on Blade Dancer immediately grants health instead of regenerating health and shields. So you get 40 health back instead of also regenerating your shields. Personally, it's frustrating seeing a Blade Dancer pop their super, swing straight at someone. We're all team firing him. He manages to kill one guy and then has enough health and is close enough to kill the second guy and then has way too much health for the third guy to kill him. In those situations, that's a little frustrating. But I think this isn't a nerf that's necessary. Aside from that one niche situation, which only comes up if your team is good and they manage to get lucky because maybe you miss a couple of shots where you were all team firing, this situation where it matters that you got that health back doesn't happen. And the fact that you don't even get a shield back, like, I don't know. I don't understand this. I don't like it. It is what it is. I guess it makes you, yeah, I don't even know what it does. I think it's bad. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. Throwing knife does solar damage now. That's cool for PvE. Blink will be adjusted. Exact changes. So they haven't said what Blink does, but if you watch the stream, Blink takes away part of your HUD. It keeps the points in the corner, but it takes away your radar, and it takes away your ammo and your super and your ability indicator in the bottom left. That's gone temporarily for like a second or two. So that means that offensively, you're playing Inferno when you're blink shotgunning someone or when you're blinking on top of people. It becomes a temporary version of Inferno. So if you push someone that's blinking at you and you slide underneath underneath them, they're not going to know where you are exactly. Whereas before with radar, they're going to know you're right underneath them. But if you time it so you're sliding underneath them as they're blinking and they don't see you, they're going to have no idea where you went. They're going to think you disappeared. So that radar change, again, gives you a lot of counterplay to someone that's offensively blinking. Defensively blinking doesn't change. You don't really need to see your radar when you're trying to run away from someone. You don't really need to see your radar when you're dodging a rocket or whatever. And you're probably facing your target anyway, so it's not like you're losing sight of what's going on. It's only for those situations where you're pushing and you're trying to blink onto someone that change matters. Warlocks, the Stormcaller melee range was reduced. This will make this coupled with all the shotgun nerfs basically means that anyone that was a shotgunner or warlock that played Storm should switch to Void. There's no real reason for you to stick to Stormcaller unless you really, really like the super. So if you're abusing Scories and Electrostatic Mind, you still want to be a Stormcaller. But if you're a shotgunner and you're not abusing Scories, then you should be Void now. You have a better grenade. The melee can be a little wonky, but if the whole point of picking Storm was for the melee range, and now that they're taking that away from you or vastly reducing it, it doesn't really matter anymore. So go to Void. Go off Storm. Learn something new. Nova's really good. Landfall now reduces total time in Storm Trance. I don't know who was using Landfall, but you should have been using Ionic Blink. So hopefully this pushes you into Ionic Blink. And apparently, yeah, and the same change to Hunter Blink. This isn't Ionic Blink, this is normal Blink, so Void Blink can't just push people. Okay, and so this one is the final one we're going to go over. This is near and dear to my heart, and this pains me to say, but Juggernaut is a niche pick now, and it's viable but not competitive anymore. So this kind of sucks for people that use Juggernaut effectively. Okay, so how it works is right now, if you're sprinting and you start skating off the ground, the timer ticking down on Juggernaut before it procs continues to go. The change happens as soon as you get off the ground, that timer resets and stays at max. So what does that mean like in practice? Well, that means when, let's say it's, I believe it's about, I don't know, it's between 3 and 5 seconds to charge it, right? So if after 3 seconds of sprinting, if after 1 second of sprinting and then 2 seconds of skating, Jug comes up. Now, after 1 second of sprinting and 2 seconds of skating, the timer stays at 3 seconds until you land, and then it resets. And it starts over again. And then if you sprint for 3 seconds, Jug comes up. An additional change is Juggernaut Shield, when you get off the ground, doesn't last the full duration anymore. It only lasts 2 seconds off the ground. So if you sprint for 3 seconds, and then you skate, and it activates. You only have 2 seconds of jug, even though jug might last a total of 7, let's say, to 10 seconds. I don't have exact numbers because I can't really remember off the top of my head right now, but let's say it lasts for 8 seconds. You lose 3 seconds with this nerf. And it takes more than 2 seconds to go through an entire skate rotation. So that means that your jug is only up in the air for enough time for you to need to be in shotgun range or to need to be in primary range. You can no longer just use it as moving cover. You have to be very mindful of when you get off the ground with it. So that makes this a niche pick because it's going to be very, very unreliable. And if you're good at it, how good it is directly related to how bad your opponents are. So if your opponents stay in the same spot and they don't move and they let you move through cover, and by the time they see you, you have a jug shield, they're stupid because they should be moving back. Or if they're in a hallway and you just get to run through the hallway and they don't move back, they're stupid. That's not you making a good play, that's them being dumb. And that's how jug has always worked. It was just a little bit more difficult to not be stupid. You had to be very mindful of your positioning to deal with Juggernaut. Now you don't necessarily need to be as mindful. Because as soon as you start moving back, and if they get off the ground, it's gonna drop. And if you start moving sideways, they're not gonna be able to turn because it's very difficult to turn on a dime on the ground. It almost makes it so that if you want to run Juggernaut, you absolutely need to be running Dune Marchers. So I will say that again. If you want to run Juggernaut, you need to run Dune Marchers. Because you're not going to be skating as much. So you're not going to get as much out of Twilight Garrison. And being able to turn on a dime lets you keep that jug shield up for as much as you need to. Personally, the only reason to play Striker now is max armor, like 12 to 13 armor. And like you should probably run Unstoppable. I don't think Shoulder Charge is even that great anymore, especially with Twilight Garrison in the game. And Lightning Grenade. And Fist of Havoc. Like if you were banking on being able to skate and Juggernaut and be a shotgunner, you shouldn't do it anymore. This change to in-air accuracy basically means that skate shotgunning is pretty bad because of how unreliable it's going to be. So, yeah, that's how it's going to be. That pretty much covers the preview notes. Once the actual notes come out, I'll touch on them on a future episode, next Thursday's episode. It won't be super in-depth like this one will be. It won't be a full episode. It'll just be a caveat at the beginning or at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll be happy to answer best I can. I'm very excited for this patch. I think this has a lot of good to it. I think it has a lot more good than bad. You know, maybe there were like 2 or 3 bad, like things I would point out that this is bad or this is kind of upsetting. But on the whole, you know, 80-90% of this patch is pretty good in my opinion for the Crucible. And I'm very excited to play it. I know this wasn't a gameplay critique one, but if you want your gameplay critiques, which is what I normally do, remember you can always email to Keen at Crucible Bootcamp. We'll be back to business as usual on Monday. I have a few critiques lined up for the next couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to getting you guys some good information on how to play better. If you want to support the stream, you can always become a Patreon backer. But I say this all the time, most importantly, tell your friends. If you want the channel to really grow, just get more people watching. And you can do that by telling 2 of your friends about what I do, having them show up or watch a video or 2, and, you know, then they can tell 2 of their friends, and then that's, you know, really the easiest way for you to help me grow. I'm going to do what I need to do, but that would be greatly appreciated on my end. But as usual, I've been your host, King Koala. This has been Crucible Bootcamp, and class is dismissed. See you guys next time.